In the heart of Rome, the Tiber's waters carried whispers of glory and betrayal. Marcus Valerius, a young senator's son, wandered the forum, absorbing the debates, the smells of bread and olive oil, and the murmurs of merchants. But behind the grandeur, there was unease. Rumors spoke of unrest in the provinces and of legions growing restless. Rome's marble walls gleamed under the sun, but Marcus could feel the shadows lengthening.
His father, Senator Gaius Valerius, returned from the Curia with furrowed brows. The emperor's advisors had warned of a rebellion in Gaul, and Gaius feared it was more than rumor. At dinner, the family ate in silence, the clink of cups echoing in the atrium. Marcus's mother, Livia, tried to keep the mood light, but her eyes betrayed her worry. That night, Marcus lay awake, hearing distant shouts from the streets.
The next morning, the forum was different. Soldiers stood at every archway, their lorica segmentata glinting. A proclamation had been nailed to the rostra. The emperor called for volunteers to join the legions in quelling the unrest. Marcus's heart pounded. Though barely 20, he longed for honor. Yet he knew his father would never allow him to leave the safety of Rome's walls. Still, the thought of adventure clung to him like armor.
Days passed, and the city's mood grew heavier. Bread lines lengthened, and prices rose. The sound of hoofbeats at night carried news from the frontier. Marcus often visited his friend Lucius, a blacksmith's son who worked on gladius blades for departing soldiers. "War is coming," Lucius muttered, hammers striking iron. "If Rome doesn't act swiftly, the rebels will reach the heart." Marcus said nothing, but inside, his resolve hardened. One evening, Marcus overheard his father speaking to a fellow senator. The rebellion's leader, Cassian of Gaul, was once a decorated Roman centurion, betrayed by corrupt officers. Now, Cassian sought vengeance, rallying thousands to his banner. Gaius feared Rome underestimated him. Marcus felt a strange respect for this man he had never met, a soldier turned rebel, driven not by greed, but by justice twisted into fury. The city prepared for war. Smiths worked by torchlight, warehouses filled with grain, and temples overflowed with prayers. Marcus could no longer resist the pull. He met Lucius in secret and asked for a forged enlistment scroll. "You'll get yourself killed," Lucius warned, but still handed him the parchment. That night, Marcus hid the scroll beneath his tunic, heart racing, knowing he was crossing a line from which he couldn't return.
At dawn, Marcus slipped from his family's domus, blending with recruits at the Field of Mars. Officers inspected scrolls, shouting orders. When his turn came, Marcus's false name passed unnoticed. He was issued armor and a short sword heavier than he expected. The drill sergeant's voice thundered over the field, shaping farmers and merchants' sons into soldiers. Marcus's arms ached, but pride kept him standing. Weeks blurred into a rhythm of marching, drilling, and enduring the harsh discipline of the centurions. Marcus learned to fight in formation, to trust the man beside him, and to fear the cold efficiency of Roman tactics. Letters from home remained unopened in his pack. He couldn't bear to read his mother's words. The day finally came when the legions were ordered north, their standards gleaming against the morning mist. Crossing the Alps was like stepping into another world. Snow bit into their skin, and winds howled through narrow passes. Many soldiers grumbled, but the veterans reminded them that hardship was the forge of warriors. Marcus's body grew leaner, his spirit harder. At night, he stared into the campfire, wondering if Cassian was somewhere beyond the mountains, waiting with his army. In the plains beyond, the first signs of war appeared: burned farms, empty villages, and silent roads. The air smelled of smoke and fear. Scouts reported that Cassian's forces were near, their numbers swelling with deserters from Rome's own ranks. Marcus felt a chill, not from the wind, but from the thought of facing men who had once worn the same armor as he did. The battle came at dawn. Trumpets blared, the ground shook with the charge. Marcus fought in the tight formation, shield locked with his brothers in arms. Arrows darkened the sky. He struck, parried, and pushed forward, barely aware of the chaos around him. The clash was brutal, neither side yielding.
Cassian himself was seen at the front, his voice carrying over the din, rallying his warriors.
Hours passed, and the field turned red. Marcus's arm bled from a shallow cut, but he pressed on. Then, in the chaos, he found himself face to face with Cassian. The rebels' eyes were fierce, but strangely calm. For a heartbeat, they hesitated, warriors bound by unspoken respect. Then another soldier lunged, breaking the moment, and Cassian vanished into the throng.
Night fell, and the legions counted their dead. Victory was claimed, but it felt hollow. Cassian had escaped, and the rebellion was far from over. Around the campfires, men whispered of his cunning, saying he fought not for gold, but for the dignity Rome had stripped from him. Marcus could not shake the image of those steady eyes in the chaos.
Weeks of pursuit followed. Villages were retaken, prisoners freed, yet Cassian always eluded capture. Marcus grew weary, not of the marching or the cold, but of the gnawing doubt. Was their cause truly just? He had joined seeking glory, but now saw only grieving mothers and empty homes. The line between rebel and soldier blurred more with each passing day.
Finally, Cassian was cornered near a river's bend. The battle was swift and merciless. Marcus, in the press of combat, saw Cassian struck down by an officer's spear. The rebel leader fell to his knees, blood staining the earth. Marcus reached him first, catching him before he collapsed fully. Cassian's last words were soft. "Remember, Rome is not its marble, but its people." Marcus carried those words back to Rome, but not the glory he once imagined. The city welcomed the legions with cheers, yet Marcus felt the applause was for something hollow. He visited the Forum again, now seeing not only its beauty, but also its cracks, the whispers of corruption, the quiet suffering in the alleys. His father embraced him, pride in his eyes, yet Marcus could not speak of what he had truly seen. That night, he burned his armor, the flames casting tall shadows on the garden walls. He swore to serve Rome in another way, through truth, not the sword. The war had taken his innocence, but left him with a purpose forged in blood and doubt. Years later, as a senator himself, Marcus stood before the Curia and spoke against the greed of the powerful. Some listened, others scoffed, but he no longer feared their judgment. The Tiber still flowed, carrying whispers, but Marcus had learned to speak louder. In the heart of Rome, the shadows still lingered, yet so did the light in those willing to bear it.
Years passed, and Rome changed, not all at once, but like stone worn by the steady pull of the Tiber. Marcus Valerius became known not as the son of a senator, nor as a soldier, but as a voice that refused to bend under the weight of silence. His speeches were not the thunderous declarations of generals, but the patient reasoning of a man who had seen the price of pride and the emptiness of hollow victories. He visited the provinces he once marched through, not with legions, but with scholars, engineers, and grain ships, rebuilding what war had burned. In Gaul, he stood before the children of men he had fought and offered not chains, but roads, schools, and trade.
The memory of Cassian lingered, in every village that whispered of justice, in every hand that gripped his in cautious trust. At night, Marcus would sometimes walk to the Tiber's edge, watching its endless flow under the moon. The city's marble still gleamed, but he knew its true strength lay not in stone or steel, but in the bond between its people. His hair silvered, his steps slowed, but his resolve never dimmed. When the Senate finally passed laws curbing the excesses of the powerful, some credited him, others resented him, yet Marcus only smiled. He had learned long ago that victory was not measured in applause, but in the quiet endurance of what was right. On his last evening, he watched the sun set over the Forum, its light washing the stones in gold, and thought of Cassian's words. Rome was not its marble, Rome was its people. And as the shadows stretched across the city, Marcus felt peace, and knowing he had, in his own way, kept that truth alive.